Hello everyone. Today I'll discuss with you about Web 2.0. This is a very important concept. The emergence of Web 2.0 has changed the scenario of conventional approach of communication process. Along with this concept, I'll discuss about the key characteristics of Web 2.0 and the architecture of participation, network effects, database management, which are quite important to understand in this new media class. So here we begin. Before the emergence of Web 2.0 technology of Internet, it was Web 1.0, which only allowed one-dimensional communication process. It was the first stage of evolution of World Wide Web when only static HTML was possible. People could not take part in content development. This disadvantageous feature of Web 1.0 resulted in this record generation of World Wide Web called Web 2.0. Web 2.0 refers to a suite of technologies that have dramatically lowered the interaction cost of two-way communication over the World Wide Web, which has democratized the production of information and applications across the internet. To sum up the Web 2.0 phenomenon in one sentence, lower communication costs have led to opportunities for more inclusive, collaborative, democratic online participation. As the cost of communicating online decreased, more people in terms of million decided that it was worthwhile to participate in this communication network. So we see that collaboration, contribution, and community are the order of the day, and there is a sense in which something that a new social fabric is being constructed before our eyes. However, it is also important to acknowledge that these ideas are not necessarily the preserve of Web 2.0, but are in fact direct or indirect reflection of power of the network. I'll discuss the key characteristics of Web 2.0. First one is architecture of participation. This concept predates a discussion about Web 2.0 having its roots in open source software development communities. Such communities organize themselves so that there are lowered barriers of participation and a real market for new ideas and suggestions that are adopted by popular acclamation. This is a subtle concept expressing something more than and indeed building on the ideas of collaboration and user production or user generated content. The key to understanding it is to give equal weight to both architecture and participation, and at the most basic level, it means that the way a service is actually designed can improve and facilitate mass user participation. As for example, lower barrier to use. At a most sophisticated level, the architecture of participation occurs when, through normal use of an application or service, the service itself gets better. To a user, this appears to be a side effect of using the service, but in fact, the system has been designed to take the user interaction and utilize them to improve itself. As for example, Google search. As a Web 2.0 concept, this idea of opening up goes beyond the open source software, the idea of opening up code to developers, to opening up content reduction to all users and exposing data for reuse and combination in so-called mess up. The second one is network effects. The network effect is generally an economic term used to describe the increase in value to the existing users of a service in which there is some form of interaction with others as more and more people start to use it. The web as a network of interlinked nodes and is itself built upon the technologies and protocols of the internet like TCP/IP, routers, and servers, which form a telecommunication network. There are over a billion people online, and as these technologies mature and we become aware of their size and scale, the implications of working with these kinds of network are beginning to be explored in detail. There are two kinds of concepts which have a bearing on a discussion of the implications of Web 2.0. First is to do with the size of internet or web as a network, or more precisely, the economic and social implications of adding new users to service based on the internet. And this is known as the network effect. It is more uh, common, and this term is also commonly used when describing the extent of the increase in usefulness of telecom systems as more and more users join. When a new telephone user join the network, not only do they as an individual benefit, but the existing users also benefit indirectly, since they can now ring a new number and speak to someone they could not speak to before. So this is quite obvious with the developments of social software technologies such as MySpace. As a new person joins a social networking site, other users of the site also benefit. Once the network effects begins to build and people become aware of the increase in the service's popularity, a product often takes off very rapidly in a marketplace. However, this can also lead to people becoming logged into a product. A widely cited example is the great commercial success of Microsoft Office, as more and more people made use of Office because other people did, which meant that they could share documents with an increasingly larger number of people. So it became much harder to switch to another product, as this would decrease the number of people one could share a document with. As the internet is a telecommunication network, it is therefore subject to the network effects. In Web 2.0, new software services are being made available, which, due to their social nature, rely a great deal on the network effect for their adoption. Next, we have user-generated content. Web 2.0 enables users to generate content as well as facilitates collaboration in developing web content. With the few clicks of a mouse, a user can upload a video or photo from their digital camera and into their own media space, tag it with suitable keywords, and make the content available to their friends and the world in general. In parallel, individuals are setting up and writing blogs and working together to create information through the use of wikis. This has been an outpouring of production on the web. Alternative to user-generated content include content self-publishing, personal publishing, and self-expression. The widespread adoption of cheap, fairly high-quality digital cameras, videos, mobile and smartphones have all contributed to a rise in what sometimes called citizen journalism or witness contribution, in which newspaper and TV programs make use of viewers' clip of news events. Many media organizations are undertaking major reviews of how they generate content and investing in facilities to allow the public to have a more of a role in news gathering. For example, there are newspapers now provides a single mobile phone numbers for members of the public to submit copy and photos. And in South Korea, the Oh My News service has an army of more than 40,000 citizen journalists edited by 50 professionals, uh, as you can see. Meanwhile, we see that BBC's Creative Archive allows users to view and make use of old and archived TV material, possibly messing up their own version of TV content. Many commentators think we are entering a new era in which news is more of a conversation, and this kind of change in people's perception of who has the authority to say and know is really said to be a challenge within education. Okay, then we see that less expensive and less time consuming. In early days of web, which are uh, basically we see that in early days of web, which we can call web 1.0, posting information online was expensive, very time consuming, and it requires specialized knowledge. One tends to register a domain name, hire a hosting server, learn HTML, and use FTP tools to upload files to a web server in order to put a page on a World Wide Web. Uh, mm, then crowdsourcing, which is quite a new concept with Web 2.0, or the wisdom of crowd. The Wisdom of Crowd is the title of a book written by James Surowiecki, a columnist for the New York. Uh, in it, he outlines three different types of problem, which he called cognition, coordination, and cooperation, and demonstrate how they can be solved more effectively by groups operating according to specific conditions than even the most intelligent individual member of that group. Crowdsourcing, or the rise of amateur, the term was coined by Wired journalist Jeff Howe to conceptualize a process of web-based uh, sourcing, that is based on sourcing for the procurement of media content, small tasks, even solutions to scientific problems from the crowd gathered on the internet. At the simplest level, crowdsourcing built on the popularity of multimedia sharing websites such as Flickr and YouTube to create a second generation of websites where UGC, that is user generated content, made available for reuse. As for example, we have Shutterstock, then we have iStock Photos, and Photolia are examples of web-based stock photos or video. Crowdsourcing prefers not only sources ideas and innovations from the crowd, but also uses them to select the idea that will be the most acceptable one. Collectively, the decision of the crowd will be stronger than any one individual's decision. Next, we have folksonomy. Folksonomies can be described as unconstrained tagging, where individuals acting individually yet producing a collective results. The term folksonomy is coined by Thomas van der Waal, whose ideas rise from his experience of building taxonomy. Taxonomy is also a system in commercial environment, and finding that successful retrieval was often poor because of users could not guess the right keyword to use in terms of taxonomy. So van der Waal found that people are not so much categorizing as providing a means to connect items and provide their meaning in their own understanding. So this can then potentially lead to finding another person who has similar interest or shares a similar vocabulary. And this is one of the van der Waal's key points concerning what he considers to be value of folksonomy over taxonomy. That group of people with similar vocabulary can function as a key uh, human filter for each other. Another key feature of folksonomy is that tags are generated again and again so that it is possible to make sense of emerging trends of internet. It is the large number of people contributing that leads to discern contextual information when the tags are aggregated and produced a wisdom of crowd type of scenario. Next, we have database management, which is a core uh, competency of Web 2.0 companies, so much so that we have sometimes referred to these applications as infoware rather than merely software. Here, SQL has become new HTML. So we see that this fact leads to key question: who owns the data? In the internet era, one can already see a numbers of cases when where control over the database has led to market control and outsized financial return. Google's web crawler, Yahoo's directory and web crawler, Amazon's database of product, eBay's database of products and sellers. Then we have MapQuest, map databases, and Napster's distributed song databases are certain example. And these companies made substantial investment, adequate investment in their database development. MapQuest pioneered the web mapping category in 1995. Yet when Yahoo and then Microsoft and more recently Google decided to enter the market, they were easily able to offer a competing and very competitive applications or a competing application simply by licensing the same data. Uh, but unlike MapQuest, Amazon relentlessly enhanced the data, adding publishers' supplied data such as cover image, that's called cover image, table of contents, index, and sample material. So the race is on to own certain classes of core data like location, identity, calendaring of public events, then product identifiers and namespaces. In many cases where there is significant cost to create the data, the company that first reaches critical mass via users aggregations and turns that aggregated data into a system service. Uh, I would also like to cite examples in the area of identity. PayPal, Amazon's First Click, and millions of users of communication system may all be legitimate contenders to build a network-wide identity database. Network-wide identity database. So, in the area of identity, PayPal, Amazon's First Click, and millions of users of communication systems may all be legitimate contenders to build a network-wide database. Meanwhile, startups like ASXIP are exploring the potential of federated identity in quest of a kind of distributed first click that will provide a seamless Web 2.0 identity. A further point must be noted with regard to data, and that is user concerns about privacy and the right to their own data. In many of the early web applications, copyright is only loosely enforced. For example, Amazon lays claim to any reviews submitted to the site, but in the absence of copyright enforcement, people may repost the same review elsewhere. However, as companies begin to realize that control over data may be their source of competitive advantage, we may see heightened attempts are there at control. Much as the rise of proprietary software led to the free software movement, we expect the rise of proprietary databases to result in a free data movement within the next decade. One can see early signs of this countervailing trends in open data projects such as Wikipedia, the Creative Commons, and in software projects like GrisMonkey, which allows user to take control of how data is displayed on their computer. Okay. So we see that it's interesting to see how each Web 2.0 facet involves disagreeing with the consensus. Everyone was emphasizing keeping data private. We have Flickr, Napsters, make it tries to make it public. Flickr builds communities. Napster builds breed of collection. And other ways to look at it is that the successful companies all give up something expensive but considered critical to get something valuable for free that was once expensive. Um, we see that Tim Berners-Lee's original vision was uh, very much of a collaborative workplace where everything was linked to everything in a single global information space. And crucially for this discussion, the assumption was that everyone would be able to edit in that space. The first development was Enquire, a rudimentary project management tool developed while Tim Berners-Lee was working at Sean, which allowed the pages of notes to be linked together and edited. A series of further technological and software developments led to the creation of www and browser or web client that could view and edit pages of marked up information, and that is HTML. So Web 2.0 should not therefore be held up in opposition to Web 1.0 but should be seen as a consequence of a more fully implemented web. And this distinction is key to understanding where the boundaries are between the web as a set of technologies and Web 2.0. The attempt to conceptualize the significance of a set of outcomes that are enabled by those web technologies, the Web 2.0 meme has become so widespread that companies are now pasting it on the marketing buzzword with no real understanding of just what it means. So there are a number of web-based services and applications that demonstrate the foundation of Web 2.0 concept. They are already being used to a certain extent in education. These are not really technologies as such, but services or user process built using the building blocks of the technologies and open standards that underpin the internet and the web. This includes blog, wikis, multimedia sharing services, content syndication, podcasting, and content tagging services. Many of these applications of web technology are relatively mature, having been in use for a number of years. Already, few new features and capabilities are being added on a regular basis. So, I will discuss about these features in my next class. Any confusion? in whatever is being delivered to you, drop me a message in the WhatsApp group, which will be addressed in the live class. Thank you so much.